Yeah.
Now don't shake it so you don't.
I know.
Yeah.
No move and no ginger.
No, no. I didn't tell you anything about doing this. You're okay
Yep.
with this.
That's me.
My tie on straight.
Yeah.
You know, this is an appropriate topic today. Talk about the Russian Revolution because.
Are we fighting with the Russians? Well, not fighting, but Donald Trump has a little bit of issues with the
Yeah.
Russians.
Well, that's what I was saying. People would like to know more about
What they
the
dealing with.
context. Yeah, the context in terms of what you're talking about.
We finna be turning to the Soviet Union.
It does seem to be
But did you know that the Soviet Union was created, like the big professed idea was everybody gets equal rights and like everybody's just equal. Nobody's like different. Everybody has equal opportunities and equal rights and equal property and stuff. A lot like more like political figures than you'd actually think like really agree with that. And an autocracy is where just one person just rules everything. And a lot of people agree with that too. A lot of people try to instill that in their countries
well, you
or
think
whatever.
Mr. Putin is that
Putin or
Putin.
Trump?
No, Mr.
Putin,
Putin is a Russian man.
I mean, he probably is.
Yeah, no, he is.
You know, all
Everything you said about the Russian Revolution, the autocracy and all of that, that applies directly to Mr. Putin.
and Lenin.
And yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you and welcome to the show today. The topic today is the Russian Revolution. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the Russian Revolution, Alana McLaughlin. And of course, Lana, let me welcome you to the show this morning and to tell you how delighted we are to have you with us. You've not been with us on a number of occasions, but nevertheless, you are with us today. And you have selected a very, very unusual topic today, dealing with the Russian Revolution. Before we get started in the topic, Alana, let's see if we can have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in terms of bringing you to us this morning. And by that time, we should be out of this first 6-minute segment, and then we'll have an opportunity to dive directly into the Russian Revolution. Let's do it from that perspective.
Well, as you previously stated, my name is Alana McLaughlin. I am a freshman at the Nashville School of the Arts. I play trumpet. And what really brought me here was my love for history and talking about topics that a lot of people don't know about. Like the Russian Revolution, people know of it, but people don't really know about it. Mm-hmm. And so that's my main purpose here today, to shed light on a topic that is kind of important. And, well, all historical events are important because they tie into our modern daily life in some way, shape, or form. But about me, I'm Alana McLaughlin. I am very involved in sports. Like I said, I play trumpet. I am in marching band. I cheerlead, etc. Just things like that. And that's about it. But school comes before everything. And I'm really more of an academic-based person. So that's
very good. So let's look at the so-called Russian Revolution, Lana, and give us sort of an overview in terms of the kind of information that you're going to give us this morning dealing with this very, very important historical event?
Well, the overview of the Russian Revolution is really just the big name for two sets of revolutions. And these two revolutions kind of work together to tear down the Tsarist autocracy. And now, if you're not familiar with that, it's a type of democracy or whatever. And it's a type that basically means one person rules everything. So they rule government, they rule the people, just one big leader. If you look back in history, there were lots of forms, well, attempted forms of autocracy. Say Hitler and the Jews, he tried to kind of run everything with him just being the sole leader, not really having a government, just him. Lots of dictators try to instill an autocracy, but a lot of times it doesn't work. But as I was saying, the Russian Revolution is just a big name for that. And see, once the Russian Revolution occurred in 1917, this overthrew that autocracy that I mentioned, and this was the beginning of the Soviet Union, which would come to play in 1922.
Why don't you tell us something about how this overthrowing of this autocracy came about? What was an autocracy, and what was the name of the basic kind of thing that upheld the whole Russian situation up until that time?
Well, what upheld the Russian people was the fact that none of them had rebelled up until this revolution, this rebellion. They all sat and kind of tolerated this autocracy, this one person trying to instill beliefs and views that the Russian people didn't necessarily agree with. But they let this pass by until certain people stood up and tried to break down this barrier. And these people can be seen as the equivalent of like civil rights leaders for African Americans. As we know, civil rights leaders tore down the barrier of segregation and things like that. And they helped bring equality for their people, as the people who stood up for the Russians did. And there's so many people, more than I can name, that stood up and fought this. But in the end, these people stood up, and that's how the part one of the revolution started, because like I said, there was two revolutions. They both occurred in 1917 though. And the Russian Revolution is just a big overview of those two revolutions.
Okay, and so what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial break in a few seconds, Lana, and then we'll have an opportunity to come back and to deal with the second part of the Russian Revolution. And so essentially, you're saying that the revolution started in 1917. 1917, almost immediately after what we generally call the First World War.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, it was a product in a real sense of Russia's participation in the First World War. And after that war was over, then we get into that first revolution
in the Russian Revolution.
Coming primarily because of all of the destruction that occurred during the war in Russia itself. And so what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Why it would never survive somewhere like like America and stuff like that. And then after that, I'm just going to like comparing dictators and stuff.
Okay, well, you let me know. Are you just going to start comparing? I'll just follow you.
All right.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to get a pace to it and get a voice level and a depth to it.
Okay.
You make it go that way, and because it bring you out in reference to it. Because and so when we come back, I'll announce what we're dealing with, and then you can start again where you please. And we've got 8 minutes, and you deal with this however you wish to. And if at some point you wish to bring in some information in reference to the animal farm, et cetera, anything that you want to deal with dealing with the Russian Revolution, because I think we've got a pretty good start dealing with that great event, historical event. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she's giving us some information in reference to the Russian Revolution, a revolution that occurred almost immediately after the First World War that started in 1914 and came to an end in 1917. And that would be the sort of historical beginning of what we're talking about now, the destruction of an entire Russian society, and now an attempt to what? Rebuild that society. Yeah, rebuild that society. Approach it from that perspective.
Well, for our viewers just tuning in the first segment, we did go through my background in education, but more importantly, we kind of talked about what the revolution was. Now, the Russian Revolution is the big name for two sets of revolutions that occurred in 1917, right after the First World War. These revolutions kick-started the overthrowing of the Tsarist autocracy, and I talked about what an autocracy was, which is a one-person-led society. It's just one big leader that rules government, and et cetera, et cetera. And I talked about, you know, they overthrew this, and also the Russian Revolution was the kickstarter for the Soviet Union. Now, the Soviet Union is a party. It's a political party, just like, you know, Republican or Democrat.
Coming out of the Communist Party.
Coming from communists. Now, the Soviet Union's big idea was that all persons should have equal rights, equal property, just everybody should just be equal. There was no personal property, everything belonged to the state, really. But they tried to make all people equal. Now, you could see that it might sound, you know, fair and good in the end, but it doesn't really work. Now, something like this couldn't be instilled in America because we have different rankings of people. We have the higher class, we have the lower class, middle class, working class, all that. And to make all these people into one little division.
Equal.
Yeah.
Everything is equal under that system. Is that what
wouldn't necessarily work, because while all men are equal, all their possessions and some skills and et cetera are not equal. And so the Soviet Union tried to just take away all personal properties. You know, you were just blank, basically. You were nothing but, me and you were the same. Even though we're quite different people, in their eyes, we're the same. We're not individual. And something like that isn't really a smart idea to do for a country, because people are individuals, and to try to classify them into one small division doesn't really make sense, because you cannot classify all people into one thing. Just like if I go into a building and I say everyone in here is middle class, that wouldn't be true, because everywhere you go you'll have lower class, higher class, middle class, things like that.
Are you saying that even though there's an attempt to make everybody equal, that all individuals are not, the same, and therefore, no matter what kind of system you develop, you have to make arrangements for those differences within America, within individuals. Is that what we're saying? Yeah,
and some lesser-known political parties say that, you know, people are equal, but we're different, and that's true. No man is worth more than the other, yet we just have different skills. No, we're not the same. Like me and you, we both deserve the same things, deserve the same treatment, but we're not the same. We're not on the same levels. And that's kind of what the Soviet Union wanted to do to all the Russian people. Like, the capital city for the Soviet Union was Moscow, and that was also the largest city. And this was Russia. The biggest country in the Soviet Union was Russia. And so I'm kind of focusing in on Russia because of the Russian Revolution. And so in making all those people the same, it didn't really work out. And so, but here's a surprising fact. After 1917, once the revolution started, once it ended, this was 1922 at this point. That's when the Soviet Union really came into power and was classified as an actual party. The Soviet Union did not end until 1991, July of 1991. So this actually lasted, and it was incorporated for the Russian people. And so 1991 was about 20-ish years ago. This really went on for a long time, and people don't see that. They think of, when they hear Soviet Union, they think of, oh, this was back during Lenin and the Tsarist autocracy. this was very close to 27. This is 2017. That was not a long time ago, and so it's very strange to look at it that way because the Soviet Union was still coming into power when we had like modern televisions and stuff like that. It's very strange to think about.
You know, Lana, thinking about the Soviet Union and some of the things that you've already said about equality of opportunity and et cetera, I think that you can look at the Constitution of the United States of America and say in reality, these are some of the things that are promised in the United States Constitution. Now, what made Russia different from the United States?
Well, see, the United States, the Constitution says, you know, all people are equal and all this and that. That's not really how America treats their citizens or the United States. You could say that all people are equal and all people get equal chances. That's not really what happens because, and I feel like in the Constitution, things like that were promised so that we could kind of instill it in the country and maybe like over time we'd start to believe it. But that has yet to happen because we still have hate crimes and hate groups and KKK and things like that. And so up until we actually